music was that which led me to India in the first place, because going back years before almost anybody in this building was born, during World War II, Indian Jawans were fighting along with the 8th Army, first in North Africa and then in Italy, notably the 4th Indian Division, the Red Eagle, which is still around, I think. And for them, the BBC, bless them, had a special Indian Forces program every Sunday on the radio. And I was enthralled by this. I just heard it casually. I had no direct Indian background myself, although it is the case that my grandfather on my mother's side was born in India, as many Brits were in those days. I think his family were clergymen, if I remember. But this was hearsay as far as I was concerned, and the direct experience was with music. And every Sunday it was a Forces request program. They were, of course, Filmi Geet. I wasn't to know that. I mean, I knew no language and so on, and so there it was. It was purely empirical. So the first time I heard it, in fact, I do have an entry in my school diary still, when I was about 16. And about a year later, when I was still at school, I remember marching up to the BBC, which in those days, the particular service was in Oxford Street, 200 Oxford Street, marching up to the BBC and asking to meet the programme organisers. I was still at school, you see, and so they might have turned me away, but however, they received me very nicely, and I got on extremely well with them. It is the case that I come from quite a musical family. My mother had been at the Royal Academy of Music, and my father was very interested in classical music, and I grew up with a very classical Western music background, not only at home but at school, in that I was at a Catholic boarding school, and we were a working choir. We had to sing a lot of medieval and Renaissance church music, like plain chant, composers like Byrd and Palestrina and so on. And apart from my own love of Bach, which I developed at home, so there was this sense of reverence for music that I got from the Western side, so much so that, of course, when I did come some years later to be involved with Carnatic music, the attitude that we have towards music was not unfamiliar to me at all. It was quite customary to revere music. Music was not just something for fun or to hop about to. It had a serious message. Now, if music was one passion in those days, learning to fly would have been another. And in fact, so much so that I'd been in the Air Training Corps. I actually went up in RAF aircraft during the war, which was quite unusual, unless one was a pilot or, you know, going to bomb somebody or something. But we were taken up twice. And I had in fact, hoped to go into the RAF for pilot training, and I'd been accepted and everything. Then the end of World War II came just after I was 18, and the RAF wrote to me, no more pilot training, so my interest flagged. I didn't want to go ground staff. I went to my old school to see the careers master, because in those days we were still under emergency regulations, and if you didn't volunteer for something in the services, you were called up, fate worse than death. And so to obviate that, I went down to my school to ask, and I happened to meet, walking up the drive, a boy who was already in Indian Army uniform. His father was in the ICS. He said, oh, if you're interested in Indian music, why don't you join us? I had known nothing about this scheme whatsoever. So I rang up what was then the military department of the India office in Matthew Parker Street. Oh, come along and have a chat. And I went along and had a chat, and I was asked one or two questions. And largely on the strength of having passed all the medical and, believe it, save the mark, intelligence tests for the RAF, I was accepted. I was offered an Indian Army cadetship, and this was tenable from the 1st of January 1946. And in fact, I was in Britain for 8 months before going to India, or seven and a bit, I should say. Originally up on the North Downs at Bruton, bitterly cold in the depth of winter, and then to smarten us up, because we spent most of our time, I have to confess, lounging about learning Urdu and Indian military law and having a very jolly time. And I think the army felt that we should perhaps be a little smarter before going to India. So we were sent to the guards depot at Caterham, a greater contrast you could not imagine, Sandhya, between one and the other. And after this horror, we were then shipped out to India. We landed in what was then Bombay, Ballard Pier, on the 29th of August 1946. And no, I did not, like the late Pope, kiss the ground. What I did was to buy a bunch of bananas, because all during the war you couldn't get a banana for love nor money. And I saw this guy selling bananas, and that was it.